Rob Garcia. We're on another episode of Mass Tangent. And again, I am the Western Technical Specialist for Winfield PPG. And with me today, we have Kevin Leeper, and we have our first official Mass Tangent special guest, TJ Shine. So would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Go ahead, TJ.
Like Rob said, my name is TJ Shine. I am a sales rep for Winfield United Professional Products Group in Southwest Florida, primarily between Punta Gorda and Marco Island, including Fort Myers, Naples, Bonita Springs, Estero, the Southwest Florida region.
Thank you, TJ. Happy to have you on today. Kevin Leeper, the North and East Technical Sales Advisor for Winfield PPG. It's great to have TJ on today because Rob and I are both like cool season guys. We need some warm season perspective. And today we're talking about dyes and colorants. Let's talk about personal experiences with dyes and colorants. I really didn't know about dyes and colorants in turf grass until I started with Winfield back in 2012. They were formulating some new dyes, and they wanted to see how it looked and if they stained your clothing or your skin and how you wash it off. So there's a picture of me dipping my fingers in some blue dye and showing that one of them came off pretty good with some soap and water, and the other one kept my finger blue for a while. And then also we were formulating some new lake dyes. So that was really my first introduction to dyes and colorants on turf. Rob, how about you?
So, I was introduced long ago. I was working as a landscape manager in Colorado Springs. We were taking care of the Olympic Training Center, and my boss called me and he's like, is there a way that we had a zone go down? So we had an area that was completely stressed out. They had a bunch of bigwigs in for the Olympic committee. And he's like, can we paint that area green? And I'm like, what? You want me to do what? So I checked into it. And that was early 90s. And the only thing I could really find at that time was green longer. So I ordered some in from our supplier at the time, UHS. And I basically mixed up a tank, turned my whole tank green, which, was another story. But I was able to somewhat mask the area that had been caused to go into dormancy due to the irrigation being off. So after that, then really, there wasn't much exposure. Periodically I'd run into people asking for that type of application, areas that had issues close to the clubhouse, etc. Then when I started to look at snow mold, it was maybe 15 years ago now when Civitas came out, and a portion of Civitas is called the harmonizer, and it's a pigment with a surfactant. So that was really when I got exposed to us. I think the biggest thing that I noticed was when you made those applications for snow mold, because of the pigment, it was bright green going into dormancy in the fall, and very evident on the golf course. Obviously, everywhere you sprayed, it was bright green. And then what we saw after that is those areas where we had utilized the pigment, they would come out of dormancy much quicker and much healthier. So we really started to look at pigments for our snow mold applications out in the Western United States.
TJ, what about you?
So for me, I think the first time I was introduced to it, like you mentioned 2012, I think that was about it for me as well, as I was a superintendent on a golf course here in Southwest Florida. And I really can't remember how I was introduced to it or why I tried it or what the reasoning was. But I remember from that point on, once I tried it, I used it ever since as a superintendent, primarily tees, fairways, a little bit on the greens, some in the rough, areas that were stressed out, areas we're trying to get to recover. But it primarily was used, I would say, in my region, October through April, when the Bermuda grass, we don't go completely dormant here. We actually don't even go a little bit dormant, maybe a little bit. Grass slows down, or you're not mowing as much, but you still, and that's the peak of the golf season down here. So, that's when we're doing the majority of our rounds. So to keep things looking good, keep a little bit of, help with the temperature, the surface temperature of the turf, and that make it a little bit darker. And it's really become standard practice nowadays down here that, and there are some people that spray it year round. Some people love the way it looks. They feel like it helps the turf perform better. But primarily, I would say October through April in our region is pretty much everyone is on board with it now.
Gotcha. I'm going to touch a little bit on the history that I found in my research over the last few days. And this doesn't go super in depth, but just to kind of give a general overview of the history of pigments on turf. What I was able to find is that really before the 1990s, there wasn't a whole lot of use of pigment or colorants on turf. And when they were being used, it was for aesthetic purposes. So there wasn't any health benefit to the plant being noted. It was simply just probably like for sports on TV, national broadcasts of big football games, college and NFL. Hey, we need to make the field look better. Let's put some green paint on it. So then in the 90s, NC State did some work looking at Mancozeb and Alliette and, trying to figure out summer bent grass decline. This is actually making it work a little bit better, and the turf looks healthier after we make these applications. So that's when they started introducing pigments into other products, other fungicides, and they started to see some plant health benefits, especially with some of the stress products. Also, touching on a couple of definitions with the products. I spoke with a few distributor or manufacturer reps over the last couple of days, and they gave me these definitions. So dyes, think of a dye as like a stain. It's transparent and it's not going to last very long. So dyes are something that you go out with like a spray pattern indicator. You don't want it to last very long. It's just going to stay on the turf for a little while and then it'll fade away. Whereas pigments are going to be much longer lasting, and typically you won't be able to see through the pigment. It's kind of more like a paint in that aspect. So let's talk about some different pigments. We've already touched on kind of snow mold and when to use those down in the southern states. What is your general thoughts on pigments, Rob? And in the cool season grasses, you talked about snow mold. Is there other applications as well?
What I'm seeing now, and we see the use of the green pig product from Grig a lot in our part of the country, and I'm seeing more and more guys adding them in through the entire summer season. And instead of using your traditional blue or even a green spray pattern indicator, they're starting to utilize a pigment in their biweekly greens applications. They can see where they've sprayed, so that's what they want to do, but they're also getting the benefits of the pigment, and overall they feel like they have a better looking turf through the summer season. So if we get some stress, if we get a little bit of decline, I think sometimes they're masking that, and you just see a more uniform playing surface, especially on greens in their greens programs.
These are products that usually the golfer is not really going to notice unless it's like a very stressed area and you can see the spots of the pigment on the turf. Is that kind of what you find more in the southern states with the wider leaf blades, TJ, or have you noticed any difference with pigments?
Yeah, typically, like you said, the golfers aren't going to notice. As you get a little further north into central northern Florida, Georgia, these southeastern states that typically overseed, I think you're seeing a lot more people, and Rob knows, especially with the struggles getting seed, the cost of seed, exactly, the cost of overseeding. I think it's becoming more standard practice to essentially go out and, you say paint the fairways, but we're not actually painting them. It's pigment. That they're going out and doing that with, very, very good success and a great color, a good look. Golfers don't notice that much of a difference. It's a lot more cost effective. For us, the only time I remember a golfer noticing is, especially down here where the humidity is real high, if you spray that in the morning and it doesn't have time to dry, the golfers go out there and all of a sudden their white shoes turn green. But that's why it's important to try to get that out ahead of golfers as much as possible, or spray when it's dry.
Sure. And if I recall, Kevin, when we had one of our national meetings in Arizona, the course and the resort that we stayed at, because again, like TJ mentioned, the ryegrass prices have went up so much. A lot of these newer ryegrasses are hard they almost can make it through the summer in certain parts of the country. They're not being taken out by the heat. So now we have an invasive cool season turf grass in our Bermuda, mainly in the Arizona part of the country, fairways. So they had on that course, they had overseeded the tee boxes and some of the surrounds for the greens, but the fairways, like TJ mentioned, they had been sprayed with a pigment. And it was very evident because most of the rough was semi-dormant. So you had this stark contrast between the ryegrass overseeded areas, the pigment areas, and then the partially dormant rough.
So you've got cost is definitely a factor when it comes to choosing paint or overseeding. But I've also read that a lot of the transition from Bermuda to ryegrass can take some time. So you eliminate the time aspect by painting instead. And then also in some parts of the country, you get that slower spring where if you need to transition back to your warm season grass, it's not happening as quickly. And then you're getting into June and July sometimes with getting your Bermuda going.
And I mean, and that's one of the things with, I mean, again, as we evolve with our turf grass species, some of these newer ryegrasses, they can take very, very high temperatures. And so because of that, they're basically, they can almost last in certain parts of the course, maybe in the low spots, shady areas, etc. They can last for almost the entire season. So you get that patchy look, and that's something that a lot of the higher end golf courses in that part of the country don't want. They want a more uniform look to their fairways. So the pigments allows them to do that and not introduce all of that ryegrass to the fairways.
So golf courses are doing it. Lawn care companies are also doing it down in the South when it comes to winter months. They want their yards to look nice and green all season long. They don't want to pay for the seed. They don't want to wait for it to grow in and do the whole knockdown of their Bermuda or their warm season grass. So we have a few different types of Mystic products. We have the Mystic spray pattern indicators, blue and high concentrate blue. We've got a green spray pattern indicator. And then we've also got the paint version, or the I guess would be more of a pigment than a dye, is the Mystic Hue. Really great product. It's going to give you some longer lasting color on the turf, and that's for that dormant time down in the southern states. TJ's had some good success with one of our other spray pattern indicator products, Mystic Verdant. Can you talk to us a little bit about Verdant and where your customers are finding success?
Yeah, absolutely. I've a lot of customers, they try the Mystic Verdant. They love the color. It replicates actively growing grass. I see a lot of people in our region will spray fairways, tees, collars, approaches, on a bi-weekly basis. Every couple weeks they're putting that out. Typically fairways, tees, they're going out at anywhere 16 to 18 ounces per acre. Greens, if they're doing that, a little bit less, maybe 10 to 14, somewhere in that range, and rough a little bit higher, anywhere from 18 to 24 ounces. So it's a very affordable option and a low use rate to keep things looking really, really sharp throughout our busy golf season without having to worry about overseeding. If you're going out spraying areas that are a little bit weaker, some stressed areas, I'd always put a little bit of that in there, kind of covers it up, and the average golfer, they typically won't even notice that you're, trying to get an area to grow in that may not otherwise look that good. It'll kind of, disguise it for a little bit, but just the overall spraying of the fairways, tees, and greens to that extent, it just really gives it a nice green color throughout the winter where it normally wouldn't have that.
So one of the things that I've thought about, and since this is mass tangent, maybe this is a slight tangent from dyes and pigments, Rob brought up in his personal experience that it just greened the tank completely. And we've seen that with equipment nowadays. It just, if you're using a pigment or a dye, everything's green or blue. It's like you can't get away from it. So we do have a product called Post Flight, which is really good at removing pigments and stains off of your equipment. And we've seen really good success with that. It doesn't have an odor to it. and it just, you go on, you wipe it off of the surface of the equipment, or you can mix it into your tank and it'll clean out the inside of the tank as well.
It's also great on, cleaning yardage markers on tees, yardage markers on fairways, because those, it's just not realistic to go out and try to cover those up every time you're spraying. So inevitably you're going to get that on there. But if using that, it really cleans it up nice.
Kevin, you mentioned the Mystic Verdant, and I know that you and TJ have been working on some new formulations to try to get the color to match. I think again, until you experience turf grass in a couple different regions of the country, you don't really realize that the actual color is slightly different in some of the warm season grasses over the cool season grasses that you and I are more familiar with. So you guys have been working on that. How's that going?
Yeah, when it comes to dyes and pigments, everybody's got their personal preference of what they want it to look like. So we can come up with all different formulations of different colors to mix together, different blues and greens, adding black to make it a little bit darker, etc. What we found is if you are not seeing the correct type of spread that you want on the leaf surface, or if you're not seeing the coverage, you can add an organosilicone, air cover or jet shield, and that will really give you a better spread and coverage on the plant surface, and it's going to dry more evenly, which is something that might help in some of those situations. Yeah, we're still looking into a more, what I would call like a warm season or a southern version of Verdant, but TJ's had good success with his. Maybe it's just a regional thing. Some of the other states in the South, we're working on getting you guys covered as well. So yeah, it's coming together.
And again, you did mention that a lot of this is personal preference. So it's going to find one product that's exactly the right color for everyone. And I know when you look at the labels for a lot of these products, they do have a pretty broad range on the rate. So you're able to adjust to get the color that you specifically want.
Yeah.
We've had some customers as well that like to put in a couple of the Mystic water soluble packets, the black, put those in the tank with the Mystic Verdant to give it a little bit darker, richer green color when they're out spraying.
What a great segue, TJ. That's perfect. So we've got all the Mystic products that we mentioned, that spray pattern indicators, the HC, the Hue, and the Verdant. We've also got water-soluble packs, which are great for just carrying around in the back of your cart. And if you drive past your pond or your water source, just toss a couple of blue or black in there. Really helps with the aesthetics of the pond. But like TJ mentioned, they can also be used as spray pattern indicators. And I haven't heard too many people using the black, but definitely the blue one. But you bring up a good point, just darkening up that color a little bit. That's how they're using the black. So that's great. Yeah, good insights there. Anything else, Rob, that we forgot to mention?
No, I mean, I think that really covers it, and gives us a good perspective of the warm season and the cool season, all the different uses, and then also the fact that we're able to utilize these not only for golf but also sports turf, lawn care, really any time that we want that good, even, deep green color.
Awesome. TJ, thanks for jumping on with us, man. It's great to have you with us and, give some perspective on southern turf grass. And you're in like a little storage shed at the clubhouse because it's just after the hurricane.
Thanks for having me. This has been fun. Yeah, I'm in a storage room at a country club in their clubhouse. I was going to use this. We brought the staff lunch today. These guys are out here working hard after Hurricane Ian came through and really did a number. I was going to use the superintendent's office, but after the storm, he had about 5 feet of water in his office, so there's no walls left or anything like that. They were gracious enough to let me use a storage room in their clubhouse. So
that's awesome.
I appreciate you guys.
We appreciate you too for coming on. First official Mass Tangent guest, TJ Shine.
Awesome. There we go. Put it on your resume.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
See you soon.
Thanks, guys.